actually these two activities can actually go somewhat in tandem, because we're going to have to go out and get voters in Chatham to sign on to a petition. It used to be 10% of the number of people who had voted for the governor in the last gubernatorial election. We're checking on, those had been changed for COVID. We're checking on what the rules are now. But in the context of going out and getting people to sign the petition, we can also say, we are going to be hosting community conversations during the months of May and June, because we want to find out what you want for the community. And then we're going to figure out from there what the role of the library can be in servicing, your aspirations for the community. But it will, so I think I see synergy from it rather than being kind of getting in the way of the 414, but did want to raise it because it does require that some of the trustees actually kind of step up and participate both in monthly conversations that are directed by Mid-Hudson to train us up in how to do this, and then actually to participate in conversations with folks in the community later in the spring. And those conversations, by the way, don't have to be at the library. We can organize them in conjunction with the fire department, the church, we're at people's homes. It really is community conversation. So let me stop there. Several of you were on the call with Casey and may have additional thoughts on what you heard on the call. And those of you not on the call may have additional questions. Yep, Rick.
Just for Betsy's edification and anybody else who has not been paying attention, when we reference the Mid-Hudson library system, or just shorthanded as Mid-Hudson, every library in the state belongs to a regional library system. And ours that we're assigned to is Mid-Hudson out of Poughkeepsie. Now, 400 yards away from the library is the beginning of the Upper Hudson library system. So, we have these strange political boundaries that don't always apply to us. Plus, I'll also point out that the Chatham Library is not eligible for taxpayer referendum for direct tax support because they are part of the school system and part of the school's budget. So they do get tax dollars, it's just through the school budget. And they're one of only about 3 or 4 anomalous libraries like that across the state. So that's really a very strange arrangement that they have. It also means, and I once got in trouble for saying this, that we are the only library in the town of Chatham, because the Chatham Library is actually in Ghent.
Right. To confuse everybody just a little bit more, when we go out for a 414, we will be going to all of the voters, and it will be on the ballot for the town of Chatham. Yeah. So voters, whether they are officially part of our library district or not, will be asked to vote on the issue, which makes our strategy for outreach something that we're really going to have to think about, because we're going to need to recruit everybody who is a member of the North Chatham Library and a registered voter to be on board to vote for the initiative. We've only once before gone out for a 414. That was back in 2004. We won in all of the districts within the town of Chatham. It wasn't
all four districts.
Yep. So it can be done, but it means it's going to require some serious strategizing about our campaign approach, and then making sure we get out the vote.
And Judy, I just want to remind everybody that the village of Chatham is split between the towns of Ghent and Chatham. So everything north of the railroad tracks, Main Street itself, that section of Main Street there, that's in the town of Chatham. The other side of the railroad tracks is where Ghent begins.
Okay, this is enough to confuse everybody.
Yep.
We hope you're thoroughly confused. The point being, we've just got to figure out a strategy for making sure we, get a petition signed by the requisite number of registered voters so that we can get on the ballot. And then B, we will have to in the fall have an educational campaign and an advocacy campaign and a get out the vote campaign. So there is some work to be done, to say the least. But I'm going to table for the moment. Yep.
Question.
Yes, that it is part of the November election. It's on the ballot in November. And so that actually does lead to a couple of big picture questions here. The first of which is, do we go this year or do we go next year? And the second of which is, how much money do we go for? Right. Can I have a screen share, Randy? Can you do that for me? Because I want to share some numbers with you.
You do it.
Yep.
You do it. Take a look at the
I
bottom.
can do it? Oh, super. Okay, great. Right now, our budget, as I said, I think this year is $108,000, of which $65,000 is funded under the 414 we did back in 2004. We had...
Are you doing a screen share or?
I was going to, but I don't think I actually... Yeah, here I have. It's actually in the agenda items, the board meeting agenda items. Can you pop that up?
I'm working on a separate computer that doesn't have.
Okay, I will do that.
Let me see if I can figure out how to share this.
Okay, let me read numbers while they figure out how to share.
Oh, I could do it.
Oh, can you? Okay.
I think so. Let me try.
You've got the agenda items, that'd be helpful.
Okay, hang on one sec.
We have 65,000, which we got from 2004. Now, back in 2004, okay, if you can page down, Julie. Okay, here we go. That's great. Back at the time that we did the 414, we had a budget of $85,000. Our current budget's 106. If you were simply to inflation adjust our 2004 budget, you'd be up to 127. So we're kind of, just in terms of inflation adjusted terms, we're behind the 8 ball just to do what we do. The second thing is the library is doing a heck of a lot more now than it did back in 2004. We've got more computer facilities. We've got much, much more programming. We've got an enhanced collection. And of course, and then there's a conversation of what we want to do going forward, which is a conversation for the board. But it looks, so the question is, what is the right amount for us to go to at this time? There was discussion a year and a half ago when we were going to go out asking for $35,000. I've done some comparative analysis to see what the other towns around here have done. Kinderhook has done a 414 virtually every other year since 2005. They currently in Kinderhook get they have gotten from 414 initiatives over $225,000 over that period. At times they've gone out for significant increases of $40,000 to $50,000. They have also gone out a couple of years for just $4,000 and $6,000. Last year was $13,000. So $35,000 fits within a range that at least one of the neighboring communities has done. New Lebanon just did one in 414. They had not done one since about the same time as us. They went for $20,000, which increased their 414 funding from 135 to 155. And Rojan recently did one, which was, that's an aggregate of Ancrum, Copig, and Hillsdale, which came to roughly $25,000 over the 3 towns. What's interesting to look at is the percentage of their budgets that is funded by 414 money. Rojan is the low one at only 38%, but their intention is to keep going back until 60% of their funding is 414. New Lebanon was up to 75 to 80% in 2020 and 2021. Kinderhook is at 71%. Right now we're at 63%. If we were to do the incremental funding, I haven't done the math because we have to figure out, I didn't do the budget, but it would be about 75%. It would be 100. If we did 35,000, we would be getting 100,000 in public funds over a budget of 140,000. So that would be just shy 75%, just around, yeah, someplace in the low 70s. So that's a lot of data, which you haven't had a chance to look at and absorb. But I know last time there had been discussion, was 35,000 too much, not enough? And I wanted to provide some context for those numbers. So let me stop there and ask if anyone has questions on just the gross numbers that the other communities are looking at and where we would stand in the process.
I think just another point of reference, Judy, you mentioned that Kinderhook's trebled, I think you said it was, over a 15-year period, the amount of money that they're receiving from 414s, roughly in that?
The amount they receive from public funds, they apparently get some additional town funds in addition to the 414, but basically it's tripled. It's close to tripled over that 15-year period.
Yeah. So to that point, I just want to say that as we do this, and this is why the Turning Outward program is of interest to me as well, that we should be not only doing this 414, hopefully this November, but also using this exercise to then be ready to go back to the voters every 2 to 3 years, so that we don't fall behind the curve like we have this time. And I think that also means that, it really makes a library focus on communicating to its community its value year in and year out.
Since I don't see a full screen, I don't know if anybody else has questions. If you do, just holler.
Should I stop sharing screen?
I think you can for the moment, yeah. Although I'll ask you to put it back up again, but yeah, let's stop sharing right now. One of the other questions that came up when we talked about this last week is what's the impact on the taxpayers? I don't have the full set of information yet, but I'll give you some, again, relativity for different towns. In Kinderhook, for a property that's assessed at $150,000, they were paying before they are now paying $57 for $150,000 property assessment, $114 for a $300,000 property assessment. Gives you something of the range. But Stuyvesant is actually paying about less than half of that. Stuyvesant, they're paying $24 for $150,000 assessment and $42 for a $300,000 assessment. In Chatham, I will go speak to the tax assessor, but I had the opportunity to see at least one current tax return for a property assessed at approximately $150,000. And that property is currently paying $19.57. So our level of assessment is lower even than Stuyvesant by a good $4 today.
Yep.
Now, if we were to go with a $35,000 ask, I'm assuming that's going to increase the assessment by roughly 50%. But a 50% increase would still be on that property would be $10.
So I just need to, and I should have connected this dot earlier, Judy, in our conversations. I just have to warn everybody who is a Town of Chatham taxpayer that we're about to undergo a reevaluation of all of our assessments to bring it up to 100% valuation. So you can all expect that you will get a notification from the town sometime in the coming year that your property is worth more than it's been assessed at for the last 10 years. And even though the tax rate, I think, may go down, the town's a little overfunded right now, but the state requires us to do this reevaluation. And so your taxes are likely to go up a little bit because because your house has been shown as undervalued compared to the marketplace.
But to clarify, that is the town tax is likely to go up.
The town tax, yes, and
Yes,
the school tax.
But the library component of it, the library fee, is set by the numerator is the dollar amount of the 414 over the total amount that's going to be raised. So in other words, it's not, so for instance, assuming there's a revaluation, we don't do a 414, the value on that $150,000 house in Chatham will go up, but the assessment, but the value, the fee attributable to the library in dollar terms isn't going to change.
Right. Yep. So that's an important point, but I just want to say that we may get some pushback from
because
some people.
Taxes in general will be going up.
Correct. And the town tax will probably go up a little bit. The school tax will definitely go up a bunch. So the point being, people are going to feel pinched already, even without the 414. And it's just some headwind we'll have to deal with. Absolutely.
So I'd like to suggest at this point that we actually come to a decision. I would like to suggest that we go with the 35,000 number because you add 35 to 65 and we're getting a nice round 100,000 in public funding. But there's no magic to that number. But I think it's justifiable within the context of what other libraries around us have done and been approved for. And that we go this November. But let's hold those conversations separately. What is the feeling on the dollar amount?
I was the one who was questioning it last month, and I think you made a fair case. It's a legit amount. I definitely feel like we need to do this every couple of years and not be doing large amounts again. Mm-hmm. I think, as a matter of fact, I think it, like when you were talking about what Kinderhook has done, I don't totally care about the amounts in Kinderhook because, it's the whole thing. What does Bill Gates bend over to pick up? What a Kinderhook person thinks of $35,000 and what a Chatham person thinks of $35,000 might be radically different. So if they're asking for $35,000, it's not the same as us asking for it. But the fact that their numbers are all over the place, I don't understand that. I think it makes sense in the long term for us to do the big hit, but then be predictable down the road. That's my opinion on that. My opinion on when to go is, on the one hand, yes, headwinds on taxes, but on the other hand, I'm not sure. Okay, my son is taking a governance class in high school, and he just keeps coming home absolutely aghast at the things people don't know, like who our vice president is. And these are kids in high school in Kabod Crane, and they really should know better. I think people's understanding of their taxes is not good. And that, yes, headwinds over taxes going up, but also hiding in the storm, if you know what I mean. Taxes are going to go up this year. Taxes might not go up next year. So maybe better to be just part of that whole taxes are going up thing than to be, oh God, they're going up again. And this time it's just the library. That's one possibility.
Yeah.
Also, one thing we need to take into account is what elections are actually going to happen in November, because that will dictate the amount of people going to the polls, and which would work better in our case, less people going or more people going. I don't know what's up for election next year. Do we have any?
We may be the only, if we go in 2023, we may be the only, well, the village will have an election in 2023. They're on a different cycle than everybody else. The villages are, and they vote in March instead of November. It's very screwy. But in November of 2023, we may very well be the only thing on the ballot for the people in the town of Chatham, which means that we could become the focus of unhappiness. Whereas, and that's the counterpoint to what Kim just said about hiding in the storm. And it's also harder to get people to the polls when it's that case as well. Whereas opposed to in 2022, we're going to have the congressional election. Antonio Delgado will be running for re-election in our district. There will be state Senate and state assembly races. The governor is not up. Yes, she is.
Yes,
Yes, she is. Yeah. So there'll be a lot going on your ballot in 2022.
which I think is better because more people will go.
Well, it's easier to get people to the polls. You just got to make sure that they're in your favor. And that's where our campaign is going to be crucial, right?
Or the ones that are in favor turn the ballot over.
Yes, yes, that was something that we talked about with Casey, that people often don't turn the ballot over to vote on the whatever they are on the back of the ballot. So
Referendums. Yep.
Referendum. So that in fact, part of the campaign is to get people who are anticipated to vote for the library to turn over their ballots and hope everybody else forgets to.
Dottie, are you awake?
You're on mute and you look like you're asleep.
I'm listening. I'm listening. Yeah, I look like I'm asleep, but I'm listening.
All right.
The other thing I would say, I would hate to walk into this thinking we're going to lose, because if we're going to do this, I frankly don't want to do it twice.
Right.
But if we don't win this year, and this is something that Mid Hudson has said, if you don't win one year, it's prep for the next year. It gets you in front, you're in talking to people, and you're building on a foundation already. And so, it's a second shot. And the reality is we need the money.
Yes.
We really need the money.
Yeah.
How many voters are there in the town of Chatham? How many registered voters are there?
Somewhere around 2,200.
Liz,
That's a manageable mailing, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Liz was going to be getting the election list for us. And she's not on the call tonight, but I'll follow up with her on that.
But
Randy,
midterm elections, I work at the polls in Chatham, and midterm elections, we're lucky to have 20% turnout. That's high. It's pathetic, but it's high. And for those of us working at the polls, we always take the ballot, turn it over and say, make sure you read what's on the backside. And now, well, with COVID, only one person can come up to get a ballot at a time. So you actually interact with them. So, I mean, that's something that can be promoted just to make sure that they read whatever else is on there.
Yep. I would anticipate this year it may be a little higher turnout because there are some reasonable people are pretty motivated this year. Doesn't matter what they're motivated for, they're motivated.
Right.
But
Liz couldn't make tonight, Rick.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
okay.
And did we hear from Joan? Okay.
So do I have a motion to go for the 414 this November for $35,000?
Why don't you make the motion?
I will make a motion to that effect. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
it. Okay, Kim has seconded it.
Okay.
Further
favor?
discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition or abstention? There being none. Okay. And that, yep.
Okay, can we get a screen share from Julie just for a minute?
Yep.
I'm not gonna get involved in a lot of this detail, but you'll see where it says discuss specific aspects of campaign and coordinators for each. We already have a committee, which is Dottie, Julie, Kathleen, Liz, Rick, and myself. If anyone wants to join the committee or serve in any of the capacities, we're going to need volunteers for all of this. It will take work. Linda, I gather you have already been volunteered to do the brochure that we can use. Perfect. The committee, I think we do need to set up a follow-up meeting for the committee so we can just hash out who's in charge of each of these components, and also, you know, develop some of the, you know, the fact sheets and the scripts and who's coordinating the petition drive and all the rest of that. From the folks who are on the phone, is there a time that works that we can set up a committee meeting? Dottie said she's good all day Monday and Friday, although she may be on jury duty next Monday. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, she is good before noon. From the people who are here, Kathleen and Julie and Rick, any of those time slots fit you? And then I will actually go back and try to schedule something.
I need to find my calendar, but Mondays in general are not good for me.
Okay.
So
Afternoon would work on a Monday, but it's not the best.
Okay.
what could you say those again, Judy?
Sure.
Or do you want to do this by an email or something?
Okay, well, I'll do this by email. I'll do this as soon as we get off by email. That's better. But I'd like to schedule a committee meeting for either end of this week or sometime next week, so that we can get all of the components and all these ducks lined up and marching in the right direction.
Yep. So just one quick further. Have you covered?
I'm done. I'm done.
All right. I'll just give a quick update that I already reached out to ask that this topic be put on the town council agenda for February 17th. And it got kicked over to the Finance and Planning Committee, which is happening on Friday of this week. And I'm on that committee. So I'll be presenting to the Finance and Planning Committee in preparation of then presenting to the town council on February 17th. So Judy, I'm going to need all those comps between us and other towns that you.
Okay. Yep.
If you can get those to me, that'll be good ammunition for the
that.
finance and planning. All right.
Rick?
Yep.
It's Dottie. I have a question. I was told that the town board has nothing to do with voting on this. So
Correct.
Why do we do a lot of legwork giving them information?
It's a courtesy. It's purely a courtesy, but what you don't want is people on the town board getting riled up about a tax increase.
Right.
It will not serve us well. And so we did the same thing.
Diane and Liz met with Abby and Donnell and I don't know who all else. And that's all they did. There wasn't any finance committee stuff going on.
Yeah, well, that was Liz and Diane. The town politics are such that I get to jump through all the extra hoops.
Okay. Enough said.
That's your last ask.
Okay.
Terrific. We're going to move on to
Rick,
yeah.
do we need to have a motion on whether we're going forward with it this year? We've only done a motion on the amount.
Judy?
I thought it was a singular motion.
Yeah.
It was? Then you
Yeah.
better
35,000 this November.
okay.
That's
So
what I think we voted on.
All right, let's have that in the minutes that way then, Randy.
Thank you.
Unless somebody remembers differently. Okay, terrific. I like one motion instead of two. That was slick. All right. turning over to Finance Committee. The Finance Committee was unable to meet. Their schedules suck. There must have been 20 emails back and forth trying to find a time when we could meet, and we didn't pull it off. But I'll tell you what would have been on the agenda was hiring of in effect, a finance manager for the library. The Nominating and Governance Committee, me primarily, has not been able to find anybody who's willing to serve as treasurer of the library. And part of that is that the job over the years that Jan, Ann, and then Christy held it, it's grown to 20 items, and it's no small thing anymore. And it's probably 4 to 5 hours a week of, strenuous volunteer time. So I was going to propose to the Finance Committee, and I'm proposing to you tonight, that we hire somebody to do those 20 items and turn the treasurer position into an oversight position as opposed to a implementing position. Oh, all right, Dottie. You're right. I forgot about that. Sorry. I've reached out to try and find a bookkeeper, and that's proven only slightly better than trying to find a treasurer. I first approached Nancy Restifo, who's been doing our basic bookkeeping now. She's not interested. I reached out to a number of the small businesses down on Main Street and in the town of Chatham to ask who does their bookkeeping. I had 3 people tell me that they are not taking on any new work. But I did find one woman who expressed a real interest with it. So I put her on the phone with Christy, and Christy came back and said, yeah, this woman can handle it, but she's pricey. So that's where this matter stands now. I've reached back out to this woman and going to tell her that, we can't afford between $7,500 and $15,000 a year for this position, depending on how many hours a week it actually is. Is it 3 or is it 6? And that makes a big difference. It's the difference between $7,500 and $15,000 at our hourly rate. So that's still very much a work in progress. And so I'm going to ask all of you to think hard about local businesses who might have bookkeepers and to ask them who their bookkeeper is and to get their contact information and forward it to me. I'm happy to have the conversation with them. But I really need to find somebody who's not charging, and my notes are downstairs, but it was like $75 an hour.
Is our tax return going to get put in time?
Yeah, so I have to say that Christy continues to amaze me, not only for the job she did as treasurer, but that she has kept up with everything while not even being the treasurer or on the board. So that's how you have the financial reports in front of you tonight that Christy shared with us and came around in an email. And yeah, I was hoping that before we have to do our filing in April, so the library has to do a tax filing every year. It's called a 990. We contract that out and we've budgeted $1,200 to do that, but it requires somebody at the library's end to be able to provide that accounting firm with all of the financial information they need. It's not that huge a lift, but they've really got to know how to work our QuickBooks in order to be able to work with that accounting firm. So I'm hoping that we can get somebody on board before I have to turn to Christy again.
Right.
I mean, Christy got a huge promotion. She's got 2 young sons. She left for all the right reasons. To continue to leave this on her shoulders really isn't fair. But she's the kind of person who wouldn't just walk away either. So if you run across Christy, please hug. No, you can't hug and kiss her. It's the goddamn age of COVID. But, give her major kudos and appreciation, please. So All right, so you have the financial documents in front of you. The budget overview for our fiscal year is going to have to be amended by the finance committee to take into account that we have to hire a finance manager or a bookkeeper. I think maybe we'll just call it bookkeeper because it doesn't sound as expensive, right? So, and when Vicky reports, I think we're also going to have some expense, well, they're not capital, but operating expenses. It sounds like our printer's dying. So let me just give you the big picture here so the budget overview for fiscal year 2022. We are scheduled to raise and spend, where are my glasses? We're scheduled to raise and spend $108,000 roughly. And we're currently scheduled to net $1.57. If we do net that $1.57, it'll go straight into reserves. So with that, so the bottom line on all of that means that we are going to have to look to our reserves in order to cover and amend the budget to cover the additional cost of a new bookkeeper who's going to do the 21 treasurer items. And then we'll probably, quite honestly, have to go back to reserves for anything else that comes up, like if we do indeed need a new printer in the library. So the good news on that front is we're flush with reserves. We have really been a fiscally responsible organization. Most years we put anywhere between $3,000 and $15,000 into reserves that come out of our operating budget. So, and you'll remember the discussion we had 2 years ago about the fact that we're actually over reserved, and we restructured the reserves so that I think it's 62,000 of it that's off limits. That's our reserve. That's in case all the taxpayers in Chatham croak and there's no tax dollars coming in and we still need to run the library. So that's the earthquake fund. And then we have another 40,000 plus reserves over that, some of which is restricted for capital expenses, but quite a bit of it is available for us to amend our budget with. So, and when the time comes, the finance committee will be dealing with that and coming back to you about amending the budget and moving any monies out of reserves into the operating budget. And then finally, once we amend that budget, we're going to have to do an override, a tax cap override. And you'll remember that Governor Cuomo years ago very proudly capped all tax increases by municipalities and other taxing authorities to 2% per annum, which in the age of 7% inflation is really going to crush a lot of municipalities, and there's going to be tax cap overrides everywhere. So that's another bit of headwind in our face this fall.
The other procedural issue I just want to mention, and I'll work with you, Randy, on the wording of the resolution we adopted just a couple of minutes ago. As a procedural matter, we have to adopt the amended budget and the tax cap override before we adopt the approved proceeding with a 414. It's just a sequence thing. I'll work with you on the language. So we'll come back and we will have to do that, I would think, at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board to adopt the budget and the tax cap override.
The way to deal with that then is, even though we didn't do it that way, is to change the minutes to say that the board, it was a strong sense of the board that we wanted to do $35,000 in 2022. And then, you know, we'll put into the minutes that we're going to come back with a formal resolution to amend the budget and override the tax cap. Is everybody okay with that little bit of shenanigans?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Okay. Budget to date, you have also came to you as a PDF. And the fact of the matter is it's February, and in February, none of the numbers really matter. So you see that we're over budget, under budget. We're not over budget in anything yet because it's only February. So you see a lot of negative numbers on there, and that's, again, because it's only February. So we're in fine shape for the year. The $65,000 from the town, let me double check. Did that actually come in already? Probably not. It usually comes in May, I think. Where is it here?
One question while you look for it. How did we do overall on the fundraising appeal? Most of it came in December with some additional monies afterwards. So not a lot of it shows up in what we saw.
I can tell you how we've done for the appeal overall.
Yeah, that's the question. Yep.
Okay. 5,275.
And what had we anticipated?
Well, not that we did not have a target for it. But the appeal the previous year raised over 10,000. So it was not as robust. And, that's a discussion for Dale and Kim and the fundraising committee when the time comes. I was thinking before we agreed to do the 414 this fall that we might send out another appeal letter. But at this point, if we're doing the 414, we really can't send the other appeal letter out until right after the election. So if the election's on November, whatever it is this year.
8th.
What is it?
8th.
8th. The appeal letter should drop on the 9th.
We just raised your taxes, and in addition, we want you to give us money.
Yeah, but people don't connect those. People do not connect those dots. And a lot of our support comes from outside the town of Chatham. Not some, not all, but a bunch. So, all right.
And
why am I not finding the income from the town on the budget here? I really feel.
Rick, I think I saw something about it coming in February.
Down towards the bottom, it says town, just above gross profit, couple lines up, town of Chatham.
Oh yeah, yep. So it's not in yet.
Right.
As of January 2022.
And Rick, this is a very small matter. We don't have to discuss it, but the Arts and Culture Committee did get a grant, which is not reflected in Christie's numbers. So,
do you know when that came in? Because this was probably she probably ran it as of January 31st.
Right. It came in, I think, in December, but it's meant for this year.
So it wouldn't show then on the budget versus actuals 2022 budget document, because that only reflects dollars that have moved in this calendar year. It would show up in the really tiny font in our budget overview 2022. So let me see. I'm not going to find it now, but let me make a note to find that for you, Julie, and come back to you. All right. So that was the decentralized grant came in December.
No, this time this was a mini grant, a re-grant.
Okay, find mini re-grant dollars, and what was the source?
The source was the same, the Greene County Council on the Arts, also known as CREATE. And Dottie, I'm told by Vicki, did deposit the check. So. Okay.
Oh, I don't doubt that the money's in our bank account. It's
right.
It's just year to year accounting won't carry that over per se, except that we budget to spend it.
Okay,
But it won't show up as revenue this
Okay.
year, but it'll show up as an expense this year.
okay, gotcha.
And that happens, and that's also one of the confusions that happens all the time with ELIC. And I got to get to ELIC on the agenda here because I'm so tired of saying that word. Okay. Vicki Wills, are you still with us?
Sure.
All right. Hey, there you are. Now we see you.
Thought it was easier not to see me when I was doing other work.
Yeah, well, and it's that time of the year, folks, where Vicki is snowed and iced under doing the annual report. So I told her that she did not need to do any sort of presentation this evening, and that she should just give us a quick overview or whatever it is she wanted to share with us this evening, as opposed to doing a detailed director's report, because the annual report takes so much time and effort, and it really is. It's required and it's a burden, but at the end of the day, it just has to get done, and it's all on Vicki's shoulders to get it done.
Except for the financial piece, which is not
Yes.
on my shoulders. And that's, one of the
Yes.
things that I was going to bring up, it's a complicated numbers that they want. So anyway, and I hope then in March that we will be able to do a community presentation, and I will have all that together, but I'm no place near being ready for that right now. Children and youth, we have, Fridays for kids is fun, ongoing, but we have piggybacked again onto the Columbia County Libraries Association, and through that we've got the Museum of Innovation and Science from Schenectady, my side from Schenectady, is going to be coming in here for 3 of those Fridays. So they will be here this Friday. They'll be here one time in March and one time in April. And we're going to do science solutions, crime lab science, and surviving on the moon. So I just think it's wonderful. And we can only have so many people, but if you know people that would like to come, or homeschoolers or anything, if you pass that word, that's part of the grant's focus, is trying to reach out to homeschoolers, and especially, and the schools. The winter programming, we're still working on Black citizenship. Age of Jim Crow is coming up very soon. And in March, we're going to do the first Jewish Americans, freedom and culture. Both of these have been really good programs. Not a lot of people have attended to them, but because we're all collaborating on it, it didn't require a lot of our time, and we're then able to offer this kind of programming, which is, I think, been really wonderful. Thursday, we could still use another, Randy's got my report. Now we could still use another volunteer inside here in the library, someone who can work a computer, who would like to come and work a weekly 2-hour slot. ELIC, last night, the program that we ran on heat pumps, we had over 50 people.
Wow, that's great.
Both
Including,
the supervisors of Chatham and New Lebanon were here in attendance. And we're going to try to do a follow-up when we meet as ELIC. Hopefully, I think that one is going to be something like Randy's garden tours, where we're going to try to divide it up, not charge money, and have people actually go into some houses that might volunteer to allow them to come in and actually see what happens. And also, it was recorded in its entirety, and that will be on our channel as soon as I can get to it. Got a meeting with the Columbia County Libraries Association on Friday. We meet once a month. And Rebecca Smith, you may have noticed that the mask requirement is being lifted as of tomorrow. However, as she says, it's very clear that it was for indoor businesses which libraries are in this case, no longer have to enforce mask wearing or ask for vaccination status. However, she was equally clear that businesses still have the option of requiring mask or vaccination for patrons or employees if they would like to. And I would just like to make sure that we are still on that same page. Anybody who works in here needs to be vaccinated, and I would still require masks of anybody who comes in.
We're actually going to have to deal with this in the form of a resolution. So, Vicki, do you want to finish your report and then we'll do that?
The last one is Diana Rupp's has a business, make workshop. That's taken off like crazy. And she does not have the time to work here anymore.
Oh,
I have been talking to her. I mean, I only found out 2 days ago. I gave Randy her resignation letter that I just got today, but I've been talking to her and trying to get her to, I know, really.
holy shit.
I knew she couldn't, she had already said she couldn't go to 16. She couldn't do 2 more, but I'm hoping, and I have good reason to have faith that she will continue to do some of the publicity, maybe work for us 8 hours or something from home, come in here come in here a day or an afternoon every other week or something like that. She is well able to do this from home. I mean, not the kind of hours that I'd like her to have. So I'm still going to have to work on trying to find another person within the hours that are set up in the budget, but she's been great. And I'll send you her, excuse me, I'll send you her resignation letter in an email, but it was very nice.
So Vicki, Diana was taking care of the kids Fridays. She covered the kids Fridays, right?
We had already actually switched that around when she started to get more work. So Ann Formel is doing that right now. She was going to take over going into the schools and reading. I'm just going to have to back out of that. I can't do it. I can't keep up with what's right here. So I feel bad about that. The other schools or the other libraries, did I say that backwards? The other libraries are still going to be going in, but we haven't got the staff to allow me to go into the school to read. So.
Okay. I'm a little confused by some things. So the Kids Friday events that you just talked about, is Ann Formel taking those over? She's coming into the library on Friday and handling the kids Friday afternoon stuff? Okay. And then you said she was also going to take care of going to the schools to do readings, but now she's going to do.
I'm sorry. I was trying to say that Diana and I had a plan that she would do that. That's not going to happen.
Okay. So we're not going into the schools anymore, but
I have not notified them yet.
Okay. That's great that Ann's going to do that on Fridays.
Yeah.
Vicki, do you still have the job description that you used to recruit Diana? Mm-hmm. Would you share that with the board, please?
I'll send it to you after the meeting.
That'd be great. Okay. Now, Vicki, do you want to move on to a resolution about vaccines and mandates?
I'd like to make a motion that the North Chatham Free Library continues to require vaccination of anybody who works, volunteers inside the library, and that masks are required of any patrons coming in and those in here.
Okay. I need a board member to make that motion, so I'll make it. I move that the North Chatham Free Library continue to require all staff and volunteers to be fully vaccinated, and that any patrons visiting the library or any people, patrons are, well, people who come in the library automatically become patrons. So any patrons of the library are required to wear masks.
And staff and volunteers are required to wear masks.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any further discussion?
Mm-mm.
Thank you.
I got a notification my AirPods trying to get the thing again. Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none, I call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes, and that is the official policy of the library. Okay, thank you, Vicki. Dale, we kind of preempted you a little bit there with the appeals letter, but go ahead.
Randy's going to give a little update on the tea tasting coming up, but I just wanted to give you a quick rundown kind of for the rest of the year. We're shifting a few things around. We were kind of looking at doing new fundraisers kind of back to back to back at the beginning of the year, and it was a lot. So we're shifting some stuff to the fall. We're still looking at doing the pig roast in June. The garden tour is going to bump up a little bit to July. And then what was going to be a spring bulb thing is going to become a fall bulb thing, and that'll be in sometime August, September-ish. So we're kind of working through that now. Wreaths will happen again in November. And then Dottie and I are working on the quilt raffle to be at the end of this year. So it's going to be a December selling tickets, drumming up the sales, and then a drawing right after the first of the year in 2023, which sounds so long away. So we have a lot kind of packed into the back half of the year, but it kind of frees up some of the stuff in the beginning, because the tea tasting that Randy's going to talk about here is a new one. So we're sort of testing that out. And we do need somebody to co-chair the bulb sale. So if you're interested, don't answer right now, but shoot us an email if anybody has a little time to help out. It's a kind of fab company, something similar to the wreaths that we do. They make it, they produce it, they send it to you, and they have kind of the infrastructure of it set up, but we just need somebody to kind of help Randy out and kind of dive in and kind of get the protocols in place. So if you have a little bit of time, early fall, to work on that, that would be great. Let us know. Randy, do you want to talk about the tea time?
Yeah, so we had a slow start to ticket sales on the teas, but it's been picking up in the past week. I think we're up to 17 of 30 slots, actually 28 slots, 17 of 28 slots. And
you have some donations from people who can't who can't do it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm still sending a bag over to their house.
Okay.
The tea and the chocolate are really exquisite. Betsy and Dottie can attest to that.
Amen.
It's very good. They're both just great, really high-end stuff. So.
All right. Well, I haven't signed up yet, so you're going to be at 18 very shortly.
Okay.
Boy, I wish we could get to 28 though. Seems a shame.
Yeah.
Really, if you can, try to blast it out to everybody you know. I mean, that is always our biggest way to reach people, is tell your friends, your personal contact list, people you work with. That's kind of how people find us for everything more than anything else. So,
Randy, would you?
It's been blasted. It's been, Vicky's done 2 of the, email blasts, done the blog. A variety of my friends have, sent out notices to their personal contacts. So.
Yeah, and I sent to my usual arts and culture folks.
So, and I obviously, those of you who are on No Chat have seen I've posted it there. I also posted it to the Chatham Dem Slack, which I'll do again with another appeal. But Randy, to this point about everybody sending it out, to their own emails, will you send the PDF to the trustees who can then embed it in an email to go out?
Yeah.
I've been doing cut and pastes on my phone and it works okay, but I think if I had the original PDF, it'd probably present better.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's the only update I have on that. Yeah, so.
You know, we should send it to the Malden Bridge Community Center and the church. It just occurred to me.
Julie, when you get the PDF from Randy, would you ask Wayne about sharing it with the church?
Yeah.
And whatever if they have an email distribution list, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
And I don't even know, is Cindy Buckley still our contact for the Malden Bridge Community Center at this point?
No, it's Liz Hurley.
Okay. I don't know if Liz keeps a distribution list, but if she does, could we ask Liz? Julie, are you able to ask that of Liz?
Yeah, I will.
That'd be great. And I guess maybe we should reach out to Maria about the Writers Mills Historical Society and see if they would also distribute it.
I can reach out to her.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good idea about Malden Bridge. I just checked their last newsletter and this isn't in it. The tea tasting.
Oh, I need to get on their list then. Okay.
So Vicki, that means as we come to this crunch with the, big marketing push here, we'll really have to keep track of the numbers, as we get closer to closing up the slots.
Every day. I'll give you an update every day.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for fundraising?
That's
Dale?
it. No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Dottie, aren't you glad you sat through all of that to get to present now?
I thought about asking Randy to text me when I'm on, and then I'd come, but that's okay. Well, I stayed for the long time because
she misses us.
Which I think is a really important piece. So, what smart thing are you saying, Randy?
You miss us.
Yeah. Yes. I have to remember I'm no longer a board member. The marketing committee, I want to talk about three things. I'm trying not to take a lot of time. First of all is the brochure. I'm very happy that Linda Morawski, who originally designed what we have now, and Vicki has massaged from time to time and printed out, that she's agreed to work with Vicki with a much more professional brochure that we can hand out generally and as part of the 414 visitation. So thank you, Linda, for doing that. Secondly, the website. As you know, it's launched. I was no longer the point person, and now Vicki's the point person. And what Vicki does is she gets all the content for the website to Suzanne, and they have developed a nice collaborative working relationship. Those things in for the website. Be very clear. Yeah.
Do you want to take your video off? Your bandwidth, I think, is blocking you out a little bit.
Okay.
And I wonder if taking your
okay.
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's all right. You don't want to see my little face? What is this?
I do, but
okay. All right. Anyhow, so Vicki's working with Suzanne. If any of you are going to send Vicki something to put into the on the website, make sure it's drop dead accurate. So she's not expected to edit it. Only just for the date, time, place, those sorts of details. And if it gets up and you go, oh, I forgot to put this in there, or we need to change this, you need to know that if you make a change, it costs money to make the change. And we're paying Suzanne $95 an hour. Now, the change may take her 4 minutes, so it's 4 minutes worth of $95 an hour.
But it adds up quickly. So
this month, this is our first month out. We paid $247, and that was for basically that was everything that we needed to do. There was nothing superfluous to that. So just keep that in mind when you're giving things to Vicki to submit. The second thing I want to just, yeah.
Dottie, you know what that kind of reminds me is that, we all could use like a second pair of eyes on things that we develop. So anybody that's developing content, even library content, maybe, people ask another person just to review your work in case you missed something.
Excellent. Yeah, good idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The blog, Vicky's in charge of the blog, and she decides what to put up when on the blog. I'm very happy we have a blog. However, I don't think Vicky should be responsible once a week to come up with a picture, to come up with a blurb. I think all of us can, on the board, have ideas and develop some. Looking at a book that she read, she wants to do a review, and that would be on the blog. I'm going to take a picture of the so-and-sos and put that on the blog. So we give it all to Vicky. Her authority is to figure out when she wants to put that up. There's another conversation about the blog that Rick provoked, and that, or brought up, not provoked, and that has to do with anything that has a sort of political, highly opinionated nature. You know, I don't know, Rick, do you want to just make a comment about you feel like there needs to be a policy? And I think you can articulate it a little bit better than I can.
Yeah, that's fine. Judy will remember this, but back in the day, we had to develop a policy about outside groups' use of the library because we have opened it up to outside groups. And some of these groups we now think of as our own, like some of the book clubs, the memoir group, the so-and-sos, but they're not technically ours. And so, but they use our space or historically have used our space. So we had to come up with a policy because we couldn't, if the Ku Klux Klan came and said they wanted to use the space and that we have public support, whether it's grant dollars or tax dollars, that we couldn't necessarily just decline them because we don't like them. And so we actually have a policy on who gets to use the library space. And if the blog is going to be open to the community to bring things to it, then we need to have a similar policy. So I'm actually going to ask the two attorneys on our board, Judy and Kathleen, and if you want, I could ask Cindy Buckley to be helpful with this as well, but to take a look at our use of library policy and see if we can amend it to include the blog or to create a separate policy for postings on the blog.
Can you share with us the existing policy?
Yes. The answer to that needs to be yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I have a folder with all the policies.
That would be great. If you would do that, Randy, because what I find is that I have 6 or 7 copies in there, and then I'm trying to determine which was the last draft versus the final approved version. So if you have all the approved versions, that'd be great. And maybe I'll come down with a thumb drive and get that from you at some point and delete all the others, just so there's no more confusion in my ranks. All right, that's what I got on that, Dottie.
Okay, thanks. I have one more thing, and that's the database. The database, which we affectionately call Big Mama, has been updated between Vicky and Wachowski, who has expertise in Excel and has been really very available to Vicky and helped her with keeping the database, together. So it's now updated with we had some backlog of patrons therein. Updating has been done. So now the thing is to look at how the database will be used with respect to the 414. And I think as we go along, Judy and the committee will figure out what they want teased out in terms of people to contact. The other thing, so Lindy's very helpful. And the other thing, I had a conversation with Kim, who, even though she's not on the marketing committee, she's the queen of mailings for the library and has done a tremendous amount. And she understands the process by which you get a mailing together. The appeal letter turned out with Curtis, was able to take her list of addresses and address the envelope for us. And just, she's really kind of worked on gotten the machinery well oiled. So certainly I would say to you, Judy, she's another person and to the committee to really, really stay in touch with about the mailing. And thank you, Kim. Can I tell the story about the New York apartments? No. Okay, never mind. So I'll leave everybody with curiosity. That's it. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Dottie. All right. Dottie is no longer a board member. But she is the volunteer extraordinaire. She's still on any number of committees. Plus, she volunteers at the desk in the library. So, okay, Mark. Just so you know, the facility report did not get out to people in a timely fashion for tonight. But so I'm going to kick that to the March meeting. And I just forwarded it to Randy, so hopefully she can get it out as part of the March meeting agenda. But Mark and Mary Clark put together a facility report, which will be coming to your inbox, which is very well done. And, and it's a heads up to the library about the long-term costs and care of the library. So we'll be discussing that in March and hopefully adopting it. Do you have anything else for us on buildings and grounds, Mark?
I have a few updates. I have a bid for the rehab on our ramp and our steps, both front and back, for the spring, $2,800. And I've challenged them to try to get it done as soon as the weather allows. So I'll work on that, but it's something we need to do. I'm going to try to get it done as soon as we can.
All right. I'll bring that number to the finance committee.
Okay. And also some of this data is in the facility plan. The spring planting to complete our work we said we would do for the fence and the parking lot. We're planning on doing that this spring if we can get the stock. That's been the problem. But next month I'll pick that up again and see if I can get that worked out. The energy assessment, we still have not heard. We sent another, Vicky emailed Paul again. I don't know if it's held up with Paul, the subcontractor, or with New York State. In either case, we've not received any data back from them or recommendations. Although he told me some, and I've already implemented a few things. We have a better thermostat now that it's programmable, and we've increased the setback to 10 degrees. And so far, Vicky says it's working well, and we should be saving some dough on heating costs. One other thing I was thinking about, I mentioned it in our church meeting, it just came up. I've had the idea that it would be nice for the library to have a tent. I have one that we purchased a few years ago with some friends. It's a 20 by 30 wedding tent. It's a nicer one, it's white. We purchased it used commercial for like $700 or $800. And I'd like to get a sense of the board or what people think about maybe. I think it'd be nice to have something like that for outdoor events. And I don't need the mandate, just a sense. And then maybe I would just kind of look around, and if I see one, a reasonable one, I can come back and report that.
This is the same, because we bought a 10 by 20 and you're talking about.
Yeah, this is a little bigger. I'm thinking like the one it's I have is 20 by 30, and it really creates a destination for an event. And it's big enough to put a few people under. And tents, and tables.
My personal take on it when we talked about this before was it's a fabulous tent, and it's sturdy and has a ton of positives for it. And the only drawback was the setup of it. Because it's heavy and it's not a pop-up. Right. It requires putting it together.
Yeah, you need some people to put it up, but to be honest, with a big pop-up, it's nice to have a person in every corner. And I mean, I have the tent that we have down to a science. I can put it up with 3 guys in 30 minutes. If you know what you're doing, yeah, I'd probably have to be involved or someone else that can swing a sledgehammer. But I mean, if you have one, it makes a difference when you come into an event, when you see a tent. I just think it's a nice touch. We said we wanted to utilize our outdoor space more when we had it with the rear lot. Now we could even put it on the parking area. It doesn't have to be on the grass. So it's something to think about. I just thought I'd bring it up because it's been percolating in my brain for a while.
Mark, would you move ahead on pricing that out and sharing that information with the finance and fundraising committees?
The tent.
Yeah,
I'll also just ask around a bit. Sometimes, I mean, I purchased the used one, and it was a really good deal actually, just because I knew some people, and they sell them after a little while. So it may be that serendipity allows us to get one.
Yeah, that's cool. It also strikes me though that that this might be something we might get somebody to underwrite.
Great.
You know, or even go to Cantelli Tents and ask them to donate one. But if you can price one out for us, then that's the beginning of the conversation, because I can go to Cantelli Tents and say, hey, the library really needs a tent, but we priced them out and they're just too costly. Do you want to give us one, one you're not using much? Do you want to, what was the size on it again you were talking about?
One that I am familiar with, that I have stored here, that I bought with my high school reunion committee members. It's 20 by 30. I would suggest if you're going to do one, you don't go much less. You need some size. And that was a used commercial that just happened to work out. And I'm sure they don't keep them forever. And it was in great shape. And now 12 years later, it's still fine.
All right, cool.
I'll work on it and report back.
That'd be great. If you don't have anything else for buildings and grounds, I have one for you.
Okay.
And I'm going to take this off of Vicky's plate and put it on yours. And I would like to price out replacing all of Vicky's furniture.
Okay.
Back against the windows back there. But keep in mind that that's not a permanent location as you're looking at furniture so a desk, a filing cabinet, and shelves, I believe is what's there now. But keep in mind that we're going to move it away from the window eventually, even prior to the renovation and construction. And that's going to, when COVID allows us, when COVID is, it's gotta happen. We just got to be positive and plan like it's going to happen someday. But that's going to turn back into a reading area eventually. So
something that will be sustainable for the next incarnation as well. Okay.
Yes.
I'll talk to Vicky and see what her needs are and see if we come up with some ideas. And you're looking for some number, for a budget number? Exactly. Ideally.
Yeah. And, and something that's got a front to it so that you don't see all those wires.
Yeah, we need some, right. It has to be, we need some privacy there, and it has to look a little more professional.
Yeah, the library is looking a little, I don't know what the word is. How can I say it without being offensive? But I'd like to gussy it up a little bit and professionalize it a little bit.
Okay, I will work on it.
Also, remember that when we do meet again in the library for events, we have the screen back by the window, and it would be nice for, even if there's a desk there, to have that able to be clear enough for an audience to see the full screen.
Okay.
I don't see how we can have programs with a desk there. I think that's just going to be too cumbersome to try to pull down the screen, have a podium. I really feel like as soon as we are somewhat back to normal and we can try to have the desk moved back to the place where it was before, at least until the renovations. Yeah. I know one issue with moving it back to where it was before had to do with the wires, I guess it was an electrical nightmare.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so we've got to fight, and this is all correct. I'm imagining that there'll be an interim step here, taking it from where it is, putting it back in the center of the library. And then the final step is to create the director's office over in the front corner there where we had the architect design it. So yes, so Mark, hopefully we can identify something that works for where Vicki is now, but when it comes time to move her back into the middle of the library, that it will also work for that. And that may be a tall order, but see if you can figure something out.
It occurs to me, we might think about, since now COVID has really gotten in the way of our big build, that perhaps we a la carte that office idea and bring it out and maybe just take care of that. It sounds like there's a need for it. And then we could separate it. We added it into the big build just because things were going on, but maybe now, especially with that getting pushed further, we just opt to take care of the office. Maybe that should be something we think about.
So guess who I met when Antonio Delgado came to the library to hand out tests and masks? I met his staff person who specializes in grants. So she and I agreed to talk. She asked that we'd talk in March, just because she's stacked right now. I'll be talking to her in March. I showed her the model of the library. I showed her and the congressman the model of the library that Chris Bellingham did for us. I explained where the office was going. I explained what the downstairs was going to look like. And so, yeah, we could think about a la carting it, or we could just think about going for America Recovery Act dollars for the, a very significant chunk of the project. So that's all TBD. But yeah, I think the idea of chunking it out may make sense. And if we can, creating a director's office as the first step would then free up the upstairs with the cleaned up ramp for programming again. Now, folks, you just got to remember though that programming cannot happen during library hours. They have to be off hours when you take over the library floor. So, all right, but that's that we'll have to see. We'll just have to make sure that Omicron continues to decline and that some other nasty variant doesn't make its way to us. All right. If there's nothing else, Mark, Julie, you're up.
Okay, and I won't take much time. Let's see. I have to find it.
Well, you have in the agenda, you have all your numbers and things like that, which are pretty damn impressive, by the way.
Yeah, here we go. Yes, they are. So, there was something though, I'm getting tired, but there was something I was thinking about with the programming for now. What we're thinking of for this year so far is online events, and then events outdoors, or if it rains, in the church, or we're using the Malden Bridge Community Center. So that's what we're doing at the moment. So let me make this brief. We've prepared publicity for 2 events that are happening in March and April, and have been working with Vicki to see what she needs for publicity on the new website, and things are hopping along. In 2021, we hosted 8 programs, 7 online and 1 in-person event. And Vicki had asked for me to go over the numbers, and I have to say I was pretty amazed that in 2021, despite COVID, for the events themselves, which were almost all online, we had 270 attendees. And then the recorded ones on YouTube, we had 122 views, which brings the grand total to 392 people, which is just under 400 for 8 programs, which I think is pretty phenomenal. And the other thing is just that the panel meeting for the Community Arts Grant has really been delayed. They're meeting next week. I don't expect we're going to hear about the funding until late February or maybe even March. And it will be competitive, but that's it, folks.
Well, congratulations on a really nice set of programs that had really nice attendance. Kudos to you and the committee, and to Vicki and Diana for the publicity that got that attendance there. Well done. So, okay. ELIC, holy smack. I guess I'm just going to try and pull this report together. But the very first thing I want to do, here we go. All right. Before I get into what programs are upcoming, I want to stop saying the word ELIC. I never want to say it again. And I'm offering a resolution to change the name of the committee and the programs that they do to Live and Learn with an exclamation point at the end. So I've made that motion. Can we have a second? I've got a second. Any discussion?
Isn't this a little bit like that live, laugh, love thing?
Well, I'm all for the committee members and their attendees to live, laugh, and love.
Yeah.
So if you would rather go with live, laugh, and love, we could do that.
No, I'm trying not to be a little painted board from Michael's. No.
Yeah, I could see your point, Kim, but you know what? I am so sick of saying the other word and trying to remember what the hell it stands for that I don't care. So, unless you really want to, unless you want the assignment of coming up with a better one, I'm going to continue the discussion and we'll see if we can move on to a vote. Any other points on this?
Can we think about it for a month?
You can listen. Every resolution can be done and undone at any board meeting.
You know what? Kim is great at titles. What just came up to me was lively learning. I don't know.
Look, I'm pulling together the proposal to go to the Fund for Columbia County.
That's right. You need a title.
And I need a title.
So let's vote on this and then we can always change it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Rick, just curious. Can anybody hear me? I lost my.
You know, we hear you. We don't see you, but we hear you.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but because I went to that meeting, I saw you did reach out to the currently named committee. Did you get responses from those people?
They loved it.
On the committee?
The responses I got were that they loved it. I didn't get a lot of responses, but the few I did were that they loved it.
Okay, good. Just get curious. Okay.
This means
what's yours again? Change. Live long and prosper. What?
Oh. I like that too. I think we might have a patent issue with that one, but I like that one a lot too.
Yeah.
Linda, you said something and I couldn't catch what it was.
The website's going to have to be, overhauled to erase ELIC and change that. So there's,
There's an expense involved. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll put that expense into the grant proposal to the Fund for Columbia County.
Can I ask a question? I know I work with a nonprofit, which has a crazy name, doing business as Inside Climate News. Can it be ELIC, doing business as Live and Learn?
Oh.
Do we have to change the website? Because what's important is the programs, not the.
I just want that expression to go away. I can't tell you how many people have told me that sounds yucky. So I would like ELIK.
Judy's right. If you change the name, we have to go through all the times of changing it on the website. However, even with the website, we couldn't keep it straight whether it was enriching learning or encouraging learning. So I'm with Rick. Get rid of ELIK.
Yeah, we can bundle the.
It was the
changes.
enhancing learning, I think.
It is enhancing.
Increasing knowledge.
We can bundle the changes.
That's
with
correct.
other things.
What is your deadline for having to? Let's say we choose a new name, but don't change it on the website yet. It can change on the fly, or it can change everywhere else. I mean, we just don't spend that money at the moment because honestly, who really cares? But what is your absolute deadline for having to have a name? Because sometimes we vote by email too.
Yeah.
Worth like a little time.
I'm going to put I want to put the fund into the application into the fund for Columbia County well before April 1st, which is its due date.
Okay.
So, and I will put into that fund proposal some money for revamping our website with regards to the program. And that's how we'll cover the expense of any changes that we need to make on the website. So, and they've increased the dollar amount that we can ask for from $2,400 to $10,000. So we have some more play this year. They got a huge bequest and they're looking to spend more money in the fund for Columbia County, particularly in the aging in place subcategory. So I had a long conversation with their program officer. And I told her that we were looking to change the name, and I asked her if she had any thoughts for us to share them with us. So it won't surprise them to see in the proposal that there's a name change. And I really like live long and prosper, but you know, I do think that we would have some patent issues with that.
I can't do that, but you know.
Yeah, I can't do. I've never been able to do that.
What?
I need a little help.
That could be the logo for the program.
Is it time to open the Bible and look for something?
We're getting a little dotty here.
Yeah,
this is what happens when these meetings. This is what happens when these meetings run long. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put it on hold till March to change the name. The resolution has been proposed, it's been seconded, and it's being left open until the March meeting. I will just tell you that in April, oh no, this is last year's. Damn. We do have upcoming programs. The Heat Smart just happened last night. It was extraordinarily well attended. Unfortunately, I was in another meeting for the town and I wasn't able to attend, but I heard great things about it. In March, the program is going to be the Capital Region PRISM. And I used to know what PRISM stands for because it's an environmental program that the Nature Conservancy launched, but it deals with invasive species. And so the name of the program is Know Before You Grow with Hannah Coppola. Probably going to be Zoom at this point. And the aim is to discourage and educate against planting non-native invasive species. In April, on the 18th or the April 20th or 21st as a backup date, there's a walk with Jennifer Rosette from the Columbia Land Conservancy. It's going to be a walk at the Klein-Kill conservation area, public conservation area down in Ghent, and it's a stream and pond nature walk. And that is in an intergenerational program designed hopefully for grandparents and grandchildren.
When is that, Rick?
That's April 20th, and I think the 21st is the rain date.
And when is the Know Before You Grow?
It looks like it's March 16th.
Thanks.
And Vicki, you may want to take, well, anyway, you may have those dates written down as well, and I may not, but that's what I have, March 16th and April 20th. And then in May, date to be determined, native plants and beneficial insects. Frida Pierce, who's a brand new member of the Live and Learn, Live Long and Prosper Committee, is going to be leading that. And then there'll be another 3 eco-friendly programs in the fall heading into the winter. And that is the Live Long and Prosper update. And if you ask any questions, I probably don't have answers for you, but I would endeavor to get them for you and email them to the board. Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Can I just say one thing before we do? I'm going to send to all the board members a link to the Mid-Hudson video on the Turning Outward program, so that if any of you have interest in participating in it, in terms of actually reaching out and getting engaged with the community conversations, you'll have a little bit of background on it. And I think the first session is going to be at some point in March, not sure on the date. But
Judy?
anyhow, if you have interest, I know Dottie's going to be involved, I'll be involved, and love to have, any number of you become part of the process.
Judy, Kathleen gave me a link to the program.
Okay. Oh, if you could share it, that would be
It's
great.
in the agenda.
It's in the
great.
agenda tonight.
Oh, terrific. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So
Kathleen.
I really want to encourage as many board members as possible to engage in this Turning Outward program. I don't think it's going to be a huge lift. It's not going to be a small one either, but I think it'll make a huge difference as we get ready to do the 414 and subsequently outreach on our capital campaign. So I think this is really setting the table for us in 2 important ways. So I really want to encourage you to click on that link, check it out, and hopefully make the decision to engage with the program going forward. All right, these are 2 big turning points for the library, cementing our future. All right, everybody, live long and prosper. The meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks,
Miss-
Betsy, for joining us.
Yes, Betsy, thank you.
Yes.
Thank all of you.